Hey friends, welcome back to Big Nate's Whiskey Lounge. I am, of course, Nate, and today I'm going to be doing the Michters US-1 whiskeys. I'm going to do all four of them. This is kind of their core range or their entry-level range. Michters does a lot of really cool things. They do 10 years, they do 20 years, they do some toasted barrelings, so they do some really cool stuff, but this is kind of their entry-level line. I'm going to do all four of them, starting first with the sour mash whiskey. And so I'm going to give that a pour. I'm going to do some quick notes on them, and I'm going to compare them and tell you which one I think is the best. Now, the sour mash I have, this comes from 2020. The bourbon and the American come from 21, and I believe the rye comes from 19, but I'll double check as I pull those bottles up. But I'm on their site, so I'm just looking up a little bit of research on this. So obviously there's a bit of marketing in this. Now, sour mash, I mentioned this in a video prior that you'll probably have watched within the last couple of weeks. And I kind of briefly went over sour mash, but I didn't really give a good definition of it. I'm going to try to do a little bit of a better one, and I'm going to use some notes off of the Michters site. But basically, it kind of works like a sourdough bread. Oftentimes there's some fermented yeast or some type of fermentation that is put into a new batch of bread. So like they make this this dough, they let it ferment, then they take a small portion of it, put it in new stuff, and they make the sourdough bread out of that. It's kind of the same way with sour mash when it comes to whiskey. They take some of the old mash, some of the old grains, the mash bill that had fermented, they save it, they put a small amount in the new batch of whiskey, and it just kind of kick-starts it and helps it get going, and there's some chemical benefits from doing that. So, but this as well as the American, because of the mash bills, which they do not disclose, I'm sure some of you may have access to know them or simply just know what they are anyway. They don't disclose the mash bills, so therefore there's only two of these that we know what they minimally are. But as far as the sour mash and the American, they're kind of fun names because of the fact that they're not legally bourbon or rye. So I can assume that there's both corn and rye in this, but we don't know that for sure. Okay, it's got a sweet nose on it. A little bit perfumey, a little fruity, a little cherry note I'm getting on that. Now, this claimed to have won Whiskey of the Year in 2019 by the Whiskey Exchange. Okay. So this is the sour mash whiskey. So again, can't call it bourbon or rye. I'm getting maybe a little bit of rye in there, but not a ton. Mostly the ethanol. What is the proof point on this? I apologize for not saying up front. 43%, 86 proof. So it's coming in at an entry-level proof. Nothing fancy on that. There's more rye spice on the taste. There's actually quite a bit of rye spice on the taste. I actually like that a lot. If you told me this is a rye, I probably would believe you. There's a nice hug. You get a little plummy note to it. I've never had plum pudding or anything like that, but I feel like some of the taste I'm getting is kind of like baking spices with plum. So I wonder if it's kind of headed in that direction. A little bready with the rye. All right, so that's going to be the sour mash. I'm going to rinse the palate real quick. Let's pull out the bourbon. So now this is Kentucky straight bourbon. So this is what it is. It is minimum 51% corn. It is aged in brand new charred oak barrels. And because there is no age statement on it, it is a minimum of 4 years old. Now, what's interesting is Michters doesn't distill their own stuff. Now, we know that this was distilled in Kentucky. However, we don't know by who, and they do not release that. because it says bottled by Michters. So it's distilled for them. I believe it's a Kentucky distillery, just not sure where. So Kentucky Straight Bourbon, yep, this is a 21 release. More perfumey on the nose than the sour mash was. Where the sour mash was more kind of sweet, fruity. This is sweet but more floral, more perfumey. I'm trying to pick up. There's some corn dustiness in there. Maybe a little bit of rye. Now I'm going to click on theirs because I was on the sour mash. Let me take a sip while I do that so I don't waste time. Okay, a little more subdued than the sour mash was. So maybe there could be more rye content in the sour mash than in the bourbon. Because again, it even says though, due to its unique grain mash bill, they legally can't call this bourbon or rye. So I don't know if it's a burr rye, which is kind of a newer term to the market. So I don't know if it's a true burr rye, so I can't say that. But I'm trying to pick up on this. Not a whole lot. Yeah, there's not a whole lot. There's some caramel, a little bit of vanilla. I can get oak. There's quite a bit of oakiness on the nose. Let me go back to the sour mash real quick. It's a little more velvety, a little more rye forward. Sour mash is. It clings a little bit more. So this bourbon is 45.7%, 91.4 proof. So, you know, a lot of good bourbons, that's their starting point. You know, Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare, both 90 proof. Russell's 10 years, also 90 proof. There's some really good bourbons at the 90 proof point, and this is right there. I'm gonna go back to this again real quick. I think I gotta give it to the bourbon. The bourbon, because a little bit more, I believe it or not, it's a little bit softer for some reason than the sour mash. I wasn't thinking that earlier, but it is a little bit softer. So let's do the American now. The American, just like the sour mash, it has the same little tagline, and I'll just read how it says. You know what? It doesn't say it on the American. However, what it does say with this is, I'm just going to read this for you. I don't like typically doing that, but I will. Unlike bourbon or rye, which by definition must be aged in new oak barrels, our US-1 unblended American whiskey is aged in a way that utilizes whiskey-soaked barrels to achieve a rich and unique flavor profile. So it uses used barrels. So after a nearly 3-year, well, that's marketing stuff. So we don't know, this is 41.7% ABV, so this is going to be the lowest one yet. This was 43, this is 41.7, and that's 45.7. So this is going to be the American. I've heard some really good things about this. This is a fresh crack on this bottle, so some people are going to say like, oh, you haven't given it time to breathe and stuff, and that'll be fine. Maybe it'll be, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not. I've had it one time and I did like it. And that was a very open bottle. I'm not as into the whole opening things up and making it change thing. I'm not as into that science. And this is a 21 release. They all claim to be small batch. Yeah, so again, no legal designation on that, so it doesn't really mean a whole lot. More ethanol-y on the, as far as non-flavored ethanol. So oftentimes I'll get ethanol in it, but there's enough flavor in it to overmask the ethanol. For some reason, the ethanol in this is coming through, and not heavy, not harsh or anything, but it's more of a nail polishy ethanol and not a ton of flavor. Apologies for silence there, just kind of moving, just reading a little bit. Yeah, maybe some burnt caramel, maybe a little bit of butterscotch, but like, yeah, butterscotch is a good word. So it's cream. There's a creaminess to it. There's a mildness to it, where I feel like burnt caramel is a little bit stronger, and butterscotch would be a little bit more of a subdued flavor. A little vanilla, a little bit of fruitiness in there, just a little bit. Definitely thinner. There's a significant difference in the viscosity of this versus these two. So these two are just a little thicker. This, I can feel the water in it. I can taste the water in it. Maybe I also didn't rinse my palate in between. That'd be a mistake. So far I preferred the bourbon. We're in the American now. Yeah, it's just thin. It's just thin. It's a little boring. I like it. It's good. It's unique. But it is a little boring. You get some classic caramely, a little butterscotchy. But maybe because this is used, yeah, the oak is not as present. And now I've said in the past that one of the reasons why I do prefer Scotch over bourbon, and it's not a huge preference over, it's just, I do prefer it, but it's not by much. But one of the reasons why I do like Scotch over bourbon is because of the lack of barrel influence that a used barrel will give to Scotch. But for some reason, the used barrel in this Michters American, I'm not enjoying that. Maybe it's because it's the flavor profiles that make up a bourbon or an American whiskey. Again, they can't call it anything other than what it is because it legally can't be called a bourbon or rye. But I'm missing the oakiness. I'm missing it. So for me, it's still the bourbon. Now I am going to try the rye now, understanding that the rye is different than these three, and this is a straight rye. So this was a 2019 release. This is a 2020 release. And these two are both 21 releases. Let's see if it says anything interesting about their rye. Straight rye, so again, same rules that apply to bourbon when it comes to at least straight rye. It's not age stated, so we know that it's 4 years. And rye, meaning that it's minimum 51% rye. In the mash bill, now, yeah, I've heard some really good things about their toasted rye, about their age stated rye. They have 10, I think they have 20, maybe it's 25. Oh, that's nice nose. Baking spices, it's like being in a kitchen. It's a pie. This is a pie, but a very, yeah, it's an apple pie. But there's like no, but I can smell the crust as well. So it's like it's baking. I'm smelling all the elements. There's some apple, there's some spices, but then I'm smelling the crust, and there's like spices in the crust too. I don't know. For me, depending on the type of pie, the crust makes or breaks it. And I know a lot of people that claim they make the best pie. I'm sure you do. I'll still eat it even if it's not good, and it won't even tell you if it's not. So I'm a pie guy. This is really good. Classic rye. I'm picking up some of the notes that I got on the sour mash, but obviously they're more influent. There's more there. On the nose, yeah. Let me just. There's some barrel char. Love it. Some classic rye notes. And this is a single barrel. I kind of noticed that as I was reading. This is a single barrel. So that's even more interesting. This is barrel number. This is batch number. This is barrel number. Batch, obviously, and batch. So that's really cool that this is a single barrel. I've had this bottle for a little bit. I just opened it today, but I've had it in the past. I didn't know it was a single barrel. I'm impressed by that. I like that. And this is barrel number 19B272. Getting classic spice, a little bit of maybe white pepper. I'm getting oakiness. Maybe a little bit of cherry. As far as caramely butterscotchiness, that is there. But a lot of classic rye notes. All right. So still into the rye here. All right. I have my rankings. I have my favorites. One of these days, maybe if I have a partner come on, maybe my brother will come over, maybe my buddy Connor or something. I do intend to do videos with them in the future. So maybe I'll do a blind. This will be a blind that we do. But so I want to separate two different categories. I want to do which of these four is the best. But then because this is a rye, I want to kind of separate into these, which of these is the best. So of the four, it goes to the single barrel rye. It's just really good. It's a classic rye. I can't complain about it. This would be a really good in a cocktail. It would be, I got nothing bad to say about the rye. Nothing at all. It's so good. That's a really good rye. Well done, Michters. Now, as far as overall, it's going to be what I would also rank as number 2 of the 4. And that's going to be the bourbon. These, because they're so unique, because they're so different, well, they're not totally unique and different. I don't want to, there's similarities in there, but because of the vagueness of them, so sour mash is not a legal designation. It's just a process of kickstarting your mash bill. An American doesn't mean anything. They just had to slap a label on it. So basically, we got probably a mixture of bourbon and rye, maybe, but maybe we just don't know the percentages. Maybe they're so low. Maybe they're in the 40s, and then barley is higher. Maybe there's some wheat in there. We just don't know. So this is not bourbon or a rye. And this, they don't say if it's a bourbon or a rye, but it is aged in they say whiskey, used barrels basically. And so because of that, just gotta go with the classic bourbon. It wasn't fantastic. It was a good solid pour. I could enjoy that. This would be a good sipping whiskey. Nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's good. However, this single barrel rye is just really good. Yeah. All right. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you like about the Michters. These are the only Michters that I've had. These are the only Michters that I own. I don't recall seeing any of the fancier ones or the age-dated ones in my area. But you tell me what you like in the Michters line. If you disagree, and me ranking 1 and 2, it would probably go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3 from just these 3. So you tell me whether you agree or disagree, why. I want to know what you like out of this line. If you think that these two are better than these two, just let me know. Comment below. I appreciate your opinion. I appreciate your views. Obviously, understanding my views are completely subjective. This is just opinion. Right now, I happen to be really, really liking rye. So that's kind of why I was leaning the rye. But You might be a person that's not really into rye, and that's okay. So maybe the American is more your style, and that's totally fine. And even though I ranked it last out of these 4, maybe blind I wouldn't. So one day maybe we'll do that, and that'll be really cool. But thanks for sticking around for Big Nate's Whiskey Lounge. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.